My name is Clinton Jones, and I love creating atmospheric photoreal 3D renders. This full CG environment took me 6 weeks to complete and stretched my ability as a 3D artist. So I'd love to share some new things that I learned along the way, as well as some old tricks I usually incorporate to elevate my 3D art. Regardless of your skill level or program of choice, I believe this breakdown will have something for everybody. So let's begin with sparking the idea. Growing up, I've always had a fascination for abandoned buildings. I find a mysterious tranquility in exploring these forgotten places. There's an endless supply of texture to photograph, and the way in which nature takes over these man-made structures is a beautiful sight to see. The on-edge feeling I have while exploring these unpredictable places piques my creativity in a unique way. As a 3D artist, I've always wanted to create one of these environments myself, but knew it would come with endless challenges. The amount of detail required to genuinely portray this kind of environment would strike fear in even the most seasoned artists. This is going to take patience, perseverance, and drive. So to guide my journey ahead, I need to get inspired and gather reference. Over the years, I've collected various art books featuring unique locations from around the world. Massive sewers from Japan, long forgotten cities from China, and vast stepwells in India. I use my art books as idea starters, and for this project in particular, one book stood out. Just 10 miles off the coast of Nagasaki is a forgotten coal mining island. Hashima, or Battleship Island, once home to 5,000 miners and their families, was abandoned in 1974, and since then, nature has taken its toll. The images in this book have given me a closer idea of the environment I want to aim for. And to supplement, I've pulled screenshots from my favorite movies for style, tone, and color reference, and compiled them in a program called PureRef. At this point, I'm ready to create a bit of concept art, utilizing the reference imagery I've gathered. The process of creating concept art is my time to test out ideas, and efficiently put the image I see in my head onto a screen. Now, this single piece of concept art will act as a guide toward my version 1 render, but only through experimentation will I discover my final piece. Keep an open mind as you create, and don't blind yourself with a single idea. And with that, it's time to build the foreground, which will require the most detail, and real displacement textures will give me the highest quality results. To get the most out of these textures, I'm stacking 3 planes, each with their own texture. One muddy ground, one slick wet ground, and another broken brick texture. And I'll control which texture is visible using a displacement modifier powered by a Cinema 4D noise texture. This grants me full control over how much of each individual texture is visible. I'll add a large area light in the distance pointing toward the camera in order to get a bit more detail off the reflections in the mud, then block out some buildings to get a better feel of the scene. To add a bit more detail to my foreground, I'm using the Quixel Megascans library to scatter appropriate items like rusted pipes, old bottles, cans, and mining equipment across the ground. I'll also add a few rubble piles and a rusted barrel to add more texture to the scene, as well as some areas of raised mud in the corners to keep things a bit more realistic. But before I go any further, I have to warn you guys about virtual RAM management. Luckily, I'm running an NVIDIA RTX Quadro 6000, but even with 24 gigabytes of virtual RAM, this scene managed to use most of it. First, use low-res textures first, and only replace them at the end of your project, if you can clearly tell they're low-res. This way, you don't have to replace every single texture when your system inevitably locks up. Second is to ensure your black and white textures are red as such, as opposed to color textures, which take up more VRAM. And finally, use instances when duplicating geometry. Instances reference a model versus duplicating 30 versions of the same mesh. It's the only reason I'm able to populate my scene with these extremely high-res photoscans. And only by sticking to these 3 RAM-saving tips was I able to complete this ambitious scene. And finally, to wrap out the foreground, I added a large storm drain that trails off into the background, but ran into an issue when I realized there weren't any storm drain textures online. Yeah, there's concrete textures, but naturally, storm drains are made from endless slabs of concrete that over time have collected layer upon layer of unique texture. The 2 endless strips of concrete I sought were hidden underneath a massive bridge and inside an actual storm drain. For both, I captured a series of images with my iPhone, making sure to include about 40% overlap between each shot. In Lightroom, I made batch edits to correct for distortion, perspective, and aspect ratio, and stitched them together in Photoshop. Once my massive color map was created, I generated a normal map, which adds surface detail, and a roughness and specular map to decide how shiny our concrete is. And pretty soon here, I'll be releasing a start-to-finish in-depth video on how you can venture out, take some high-quality textures, and process everything yourself, so be sure to subscribe to stay in the know. This video is brought to you by Monk Manual. It's a 90-day planner designed to bring the timeless wisdom of monk living to your everyday life. I'm a true believer in the idea that consistency and reflection is the only way to truly master something, and the Monk Manual is specifically designed to guide you through that process. Most planners only have space for your schedule, but the Monk Manual goes so much further. Its daily pages are the meat of the planner and help you schedule your most important tasks, track habits you're working on, and most importantly, reflect on your day's progress. And the weekly and monthly pages allow you to zoom out and track your progress over a longer period of time in order to truly see how you're doing. So if you're trying to take on a new challenge, learn a new skill, or simply want to fill your life with a bit more happiness, the Monk Manual is for you. I've been using it for a while now and couldn't recommend it more. Click the link below, use the code pwnisher, that's pwnisher, to get 10% off any order and start tracking your growth today. So now that we've made a custom storm drain, let me show you guys how I created my custom character. I wanted something a bit more unique than your average Mixamo character for this render, so I pieced together a costume, half motorcycle gear, half rock climbing equipment, and take a bunch of photos from every angle, in an area with no directional light. One pass at chest level, one pass above the head, and another super low will do the trick in this case. I processed my images in a program called Reality Capture, which generates a detailed 3D mesh from the series of images. Since the Photoscanned comes at such a high poly count, I de-res the mesh in C4D, export in FBX, and auto-rig it with Mixamo, Adobe's free motion capture library. From here, I'll re-export as a T-pose back into C4D, and now I have my custom character rigged and ready for animation. And to keep things custom, I'll control my character with a Rococo motion capture suit. I looped the walk cycle in Rococo Studio. Check out this video right here if you guys want to learn how I added my character to this custom mocap data. At this point, our render is looking nice, but I'm just not happy with it. I need to add a story to this piece, and only by adding story will this overplayed genre have any chance of becoming unique. So let's clearly define our character by adding a few character-specific items, like carabiners, a bundle of rope, and some more rock climbing equipment. Next, I'll add an old robot into our storm drain. I'll add a machine gun nest to insinuate a war between man and machine. Now, not that original, but hey, it's better than nothing. And some 50 cal shells scattered across the mud for some added detail. And already, this is better than no story. Where does it take you guys? Leave a comment down below. Before we hop into After Effects to add animated atmosphere in a cinematic color grade, we need to fine-tune what I think is the most important step. I'm talking about lighting. Only by fine-tuning your lights and the absence of light can we achieve stunning results. Currently, our scene is lit by a single gray image and a simple area light to catch detail in our ground reflections. The only other light I'll add is the sun. But now there's a problem because we've lost our dark, dramatic mood. We've cast light over the entire landscape. So I'll need to block light with specifically placed, non-reflective black planes called flags. This is exactly what would happen on a real-world movie set. My goal is to only illuminate the story elements, creating a more dramatic scene. So let's begin by placing a flag above the camera in order to cast a shadow across our foreground. This naturally vignettes the landscape. I'll add another flag to the area behind our subject, naturally spotlighting our character. And I'll place one last flag to highlight the old robot and machine gun nest. Believe it or not, this process took me about a day or two to get right, so don't be discouraged if the fine-tuning takes longer than you think. I promise it'll be worth it. And before we render an image sequence, I'll make sure to queue up a Z-depth pass, which is crucial for adding animated smoke in After Effects. But let's start with a cinematic color grade. I always begin with my shadows, midtones, and highlights, also known as lift, gamma, and gain. Locking these light values in first ensures that you can see the detail in the darkest shadows and the brightest highlights before tweaking color. Once things look nice, I'll push my shadows to blue and bring out the green for a nice complementary color boost. I'll also bring a bit more warmth into the highlights and give the entire image a saturation boost. Finally, let's add a subtle vignette, and now we have a nice cinematic color grade. Currently, our character is blending in with the background, so we need to find a creative way to add contrast. There's a site called Action VFX that not only has the largest selection of stock footage elements, but their stock footage is the highest quality as well. I'll use their atmospheric smoke and fog pack to bring my render to life, and draw attention to specific elements by increasing contrast in specific areas. This will take our render to the next level. And finally, after adding some subtle film grain to dirty up our render and a sound design pass to round things out, our art is complete. Just remember, if you guys can picture it, you can create it. Thanks for watching, everybody.